Yes. Well, I can't see it from you, but we've supplied the list to, sure, thank you. Yes, and just to go over the projects quickly, as I mentioned, the Simone Silk Mill, which is owned by the Redevelopment Authority of Easton. The intermodal project site, which is owned by the Easton Parking Authority, and actually, we just transferred that recently to the city of Easton, but from a tax exempt standpoint, it doesn't affect status. The 100 block of Northampton Street, which is a project we're actively working on as well, and that's owned by the Redevelopment Authority of Easton. Those are two contiguous buildings right near the Free Bridge, next to the Grand Estonian Suites Hotel, that have been vacant for many, many years, and the Black Diamond site at Lincoln and Cole Street. So we're down from, I think, 8 or 9 project parcel groups to now 5. Any other questions?
Hi, Gretchen. You're asking for this resolution, to be passed, right? And so I assume that has an economic value to the city. Your hope, or if you had your best case scenario, you have a developer who's going to come in and take over these projects in whole or in part. And I would assume that developer, his purpose is to make money on the project. So my previous experience, my first board meeting last August was the Palmer TIF discussion. And I naively came into it, I'm a good citizen, it sounds like a great idea for the community. But where it turned out later, after we started looking at the economic value of that decision, was a more equitable sharing of that economic value from the developer to include the district.
I think
Is
the
such-
only distinction is some of the projects, and we've seen TIFs in the past that are like a Home Depot or something like, these projects are all so severely upside down when it comes to a developer kind of coming in. And it's partially why every one of those projects, especially the ones that the city has control over at the moment, are already heavily subsidized. And getting a developer to the table, which in all 3 instances of the city projects, were there, basically. But for them to even get cash flows that are reasonable enough for them to even do these projects, which does have a benefit to the city, I'm not gonna deny that, but it has a benefit to everyone in the community, I would argue. The ability to positively affect their cash flow moving forward as the projects are getting underway, especially with the Silk Mill, especially with intermodal, lessens the amount of subsidy up front that we have to put into these projects, and it's already higher than we would like it to be. So that's how it plays an important role in at least getting the projects off of the ground, as far as I'm concerned. And I would make the distinction, especially for these 3 projects, that it's very different from the TIFs and some of those projects that have been supported by TIFs in the past in this area.
Also, one thing I'd like to mention, I'm a supporter of the KOZ. I was a supporter of it. I wasn't on the board just as a resident. I think the TIF and the KOZ are kind of apples to oranges, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the fact that you have a very, very wealthy developer who wanted to do something, and essentially, he was forced to pay to play. With these properties, they're city-owned, and without giving some type of an enticement, we might not get the developers in. A lot of these buildings, 100 block of Northampton Street, I believe there's 2 parcels. How long have they been vacant?
1992.
And so it's all these properties could have been available to developers had they want to come in and do something, but the condition, again, correct me if I'm wrong, the condition of a lot of these properties and the money it's going to take to get into it and the time it's going to take to get them where they need to go just are not beneficial to developers. So I think that's why I think the TIF and the KOZ are, can somebody give him another drink? He's going to irritate me.
You irritate me all the time. It's different.
Turn away from my, But no, I think,
chain him tonight.
it's just two different scenarios. The reason why I'm a fan of the KOZ, I mean, number one, it's gonna provide jobs to a lot of Easton residents. A lot of Easton residents that pay our taxes, a lot of Easton residents that are not working. It's gonna provide work. It's gonna bring more money into the city, into the district, as opposed to neighboring cities. And all these buildings, well, since '92, we haven't received anything from the 100 block of Northampton Street. Governor Wolf Building, I think since before I was born, we never received any tax dollars.
It's never been on a tax.
The Silk Mill, the city owns. The intermodal site, the city owns. We're not receiving any money from them at all. And I think back to, if this was available 10 years ago and the district would have moved on it, right now we'd be realizing revenue in the time that we really need it. So the KOZ is gonna benefit the city, which will in turn benefit the district, but the financial gain from the taxes that we will receive is gonna be phenomenal, I think, for the district. I look at Bethlehem, I look at Easton, they have a lot of businesses, a lot of tax, they're getting a lot of tax revenue from businesses. The majority of our places are tax exempt, and then we have homes. So we don't really have an opportunity to get the hockey arena or the baseball or other businesses. So this is an opportunity to where we can kind of follow behind on a lower scale of the Bethlehem and Allentown and start generating businesses in and tap that tax revenue. That's all I have.
Well, I think, let me just answer your questions, and I think, they're valid points. I just balanced my budget for next year. It's not an
And I
easy thing.
congratulate you, but you
Well-
also have read about the status of our
And
budget.
in my budget address, which I will send you, I said that. I said that Governor Corbett and the state legislators cut schools and human services so bad that I'm anticipating county and school districts are gonna have to raise taxes, so we need not to raise them in the city. I agree with you. This program is not about cornfields or old industrial sites like the Bethlehem Corporation when you did the TIF for Home Depot. This is more about the urban core, and for me, it's about jobs. You may not say you have a direct relationship or direct benefit here, but you do, because people are going to be able to work here, gainfully employed, and pay their taxes on their homes. Right now, we have the highest unemployment rate in the state of Pennsylvania, right here in the Lehigh Valley. And we need to create jobs. It's about JOBS for me. And that's why I supported, when I came here and supported the TIF for the Route 33 interchange, because of jobs. It's only because of job creation, because if someone has a job, they can put food on their kids' table, they can send their kids to college, they can pay their mortgage and their school taxes and city taxes. But also, crime goes down as well, because people don't have to worry about where they're gonna get their next meal. And so, for me, right now, the whole nation should be worried about nothing but jobs. What can we do to create more jobs? We're sending everything overseas. We need to give employers like this, a developer, who's gonna build a 45,000 square foot office building that may employ 100 people. And it won't be just from the city of Easton, it'll be from the Easton area. That's why I supported the NIS in Allentown, because I know how many people we have working in downtown Allentown. And you know what, I don't care. I'm gonna lose a couple, maybe $30,000 in earned income tax, but guess what? They're also gonna pay their city tax, their water, their sewer, their garbage, and their kids are gonna have food on their table. So for me, I try to look at the macro on this issue, because it goes somewhat against myself. I'm not real happy about doing these things, because I'd like to have that money too, okay? I mean, I have to balance a budget every year. But the governor has made it very clear that the big checks are gone. What he wants is these types of programs where you incentivize developers to come in and invest in Pennsylvania. It's a different policy, but it's not a bad policy. It's a good policy. Instead of giving out big checks that you've already taxed people on, hold back on your tax revenue for a while to get the developer here. And that's what this is about. It's about job creation for me. It's also about, let's face it, the city of Easton. I was mayor from '84 to '92. We were going great until the '91 recession. We skyrocketed right down, boom. All right, we came back up. We're starting to come back up, and we met another recession in 2008. But since 2008, this city has done well, and you should be proud of that as well, because it looks favorably as well in the school district. We are at the cusp of something that could happen really great. We have over $350 million of development in our city that is taxable. And that's what we want to encourage. We want to keep encouraging the regrowth and the revitalization of our buildings. And those blighted buildings don't do that. But let's not forget that we had $350 million of development over the last 6 years in the city. And that's taxable revenue. And that's what we're looking to continue. In the greatest recession since the Great Depression, we are still moving forward. Our assessed value continues to climb, which didn't climb for 20 years, just kept going down. Our earned income tax continues to climb. Our business privilege tax continues to climb. All those things are the indicators that you should be looking at and saying, okay, how do we assure ourselves that those growth revenues are going to continue to grow? Because that's where the real money is, in real estate taxes, yes, but also in all the other taxes. Earned income tax is a big item for you as well as it is for us. And that's jobs.
Well, those are all great things, and everybody would support that. If people who have those jobs live in Forks or Palmer, they're paying 1.75% now.
Yes. But they're
Easton.
still paying their 0.5% to Forks and their 0.5% to school district. They didn't, Forks Township, Palmer Township, or any other borough or municipality did not lose a dime in that deal. They still get it, and so does the school district.
And I assume you're very confident in these projects.
Oh,
But
yes.
there's no onus on the city to actually develop anything. It could go on, right?
What do you mean?
Do you have developers lined up?
Oh, yes, yes, we do. It's all contingent upon the KOZ. I mean, it's a very lucrative program that brings people. You're talking, the Silk Mill project is almost $100 million. Almost $100 million project. Probably the largest economic development project in the city's history. $100 million. And you know how the Silk Mill started? People from the school district and the city back then got together and said, we got to entice industry here. So they built a silk mill and enticed the Simone brothers to come over from Union, New Jersey. That's what, unfortunately, that's what government has to do, unfortunately. I wish I didn't. Please, I would much rather spend time on parks, recreation, all the good, fun stuff. Economic development isn't fun stuff. It's nuts and bolts. It's very competitive out there. You got Allentown and Bethlehem, who have much better programs even than the KOZ. But this levels the playing field. It really does. I apologize for coughing.
So is our resolution different? It will be different than the city's. I noticed in the city's resolution, they also gave up the earned income tax as well.
Right, that's a part of the KOZ program as created by the state, but obviously it doesn't apply to you, so we tailored the document to just remove those items. Otherwise, everything else is the same.
I personally, I would have an issue with it if we were receiving taxes right now from the Silk Mill. Why would I give up money we're already receiving? We never received a penny for it. I mean, if we approve it, $100 million project, they have to widen the road. Yeah, there's no plumbing at the Silk Mill, correct?
No, there's not.
We have to bring everything in there. $100 million, it's not gonna be an overnight project, so if they're working on it a couple of years, then by the time they get their tenants in, it's not like they're recouping revenue from day one for a full 10 years. It's not. But again, my main point here is we've never received a dollar from any of these, and we never will receive a dollar. So by allowing this to happen, we're not losing anything, but we're looking into the future, being creative, and we're looking at gaining more down the road. I don't think Pennsylvania education system is gonna be funded the way it was ever again. I don't think we'll ever get the funding that we once got years ago. So districts, cities, everybody else are gonna have to come up with creative ways and different ideas to generate money, generate revenue without putting it all on the taxpayer. And I think this is one of the ways, that we have to move forward on.
I just wanted to make a comment on the developers, for both of the large projects that we're talking about, the intermodal and Silk Mill. It's not it wasn't an easy task getting someone on board to these projects, and the Silk Mill, I believe, between federal and state, got about $8 million allocated to that project thus far. A lot of it environmental remediation, acquisition of the site, and now infrastructure, water, sewer, boulevard, utilities, electric, whatnot. All that had to happen before we'd even get to the point where anyone would even talk to us. Same with the intermodal facility. We're really thrilled that we had people responding, but we're trying to work out a developers agreement right now that we're struggling with because they're wondering whether they're going to be able to lease a 45,000 square foot building in downtown Houston. It's a huge risk and a big investment we're asking them to put up. Same thing with the investors of the Silk Mill. When you've got 14 acres of dilapidated buildings, they're making a $4 to $5 million investment in the first one building at that site. It's pretty risky to assume that you're gonna get businesses and people are gonna live in the middle of a dilapidated silk mill. So especially the first piece out of the, or the first piece of the puzzle, the first olive out of the jar, whatever you wanna say for the Silk Mill, we're really lucky to have this developer, I think. It's not a question of that they're taking advantage of us or are gonna be making a ton of money on this project. I don't think that's the case. And with the intermodal, I think the KOZ is honestly the last piece that's gonna make this thing fall together, because it's gonna give the developer that confidence that they can attract an office tenant. A lot of that earned income and state level income tax stuff that goes along with the KOZ that doesn't necessarily affect this board is really attractive and enticing for a tenant. So, that's our pitch. Any other questions I'd be happy to answer, otherwise, let's see. Yeah.
Yes. The Black Diamond Mill on South Side is the only property that you're asking for that's not tax exempt?
Yes.
What is the likelihood or prospect of that actually being redeveloped?
You know, at the moment, we do not have any real prospects for that site. We think one of the main issues, obviously, is one, we don't own it, we don't control it. Two, costs, it's probably a demolition, and the value of that land is the land, and so that's the cost to even get it to baseline. Environmental remediation is gonna be a hazard there. So, it's a project that's on our kind of longer term, but would we like to see something happen there within the next 10 years? Definitely. So if you continue to receive taxes as long as there's no development there, just at the rate that you're continuing to receive them. If, say, 4 or 5 years from now, we can attract someone and there's still 4 years left on the KOZ, we still think that it would be an incentive at that point, even though it wouldn't be the full 10-year benefit. So
Do you think it's more likely the city will attempt to acquire that property, or will the city try to promote its redevelopment privately?
And I don't want, we have taken this property through the blighted property process now at this point, which we've started to do, which does enable then the city to kind of force the hand of the sale. And so we don't have the financial wherewithal at this point in time to do that, nor do we have a specific developer in mind who would take it off of our hands should we do that. But that is a possibility in the future. If, we have a small staff and a lot of projects. And so right now we're really focusing on trying to do well some of the ones that are really underway. Once those get legs, we can kind of move on. But we definitely see that one on our radar as a focus, and would like to see something happen there within the next couple of years.
Thank you.
Just to answer your question a little bit, I had lunch recently with the owner of Black Diamond Enterprises, who said, you know, I would really love this thing to be on the KOZ. I'm stuck on that property. You know, I'm stuck on it because, number one, it's a mess, right? It's right across from our school. Our kids walk by it. It's destroyed. It's a mess. It's a hazard. On the other hand, as I told him, he's paying his taxes to us. You know what I mean? So do we want to?
Nothing has prompted him to redevelop now. What?
Well, the reason that he gave me is, and I believe him knowing his situations, he doesn't have a penny to do it. He's saying that with the KOZ, and again, I told him I don't know what the board would go with, but he's saying with the KOZ, he knows he can get he knows, again, I'm quoting him, he knows he can get developers in that can do something with that building. But the way it is now, he doesn't have a
Because
penny
we've
to do
passed
it.
KOZs in the past where some properties didn't live up to the potential that we were hoping for.
Right.
I don't want this to be in that category.
I mean, as I spoke to some people before, if Black Diamond is something that we want to take off the list because we are generating some type of revenue, as small as it is, I know that's something we can do. With that property, I'm kind of like caught in the middle because it is right next to our school. We have a boatload of kids that walk down each side of it, you know, and that's a concern. And I know the parents and our security, our teachers that do security at Cheston really monitor those walkways for safety concerns. So on one hand, I'm saying, yes, KOZ it, level it, and let's put something nice there. But I understand what you're saying, so I don't know.
The difference this time around is every project that we're proposing to you is one that the city is either very involved in and trying very hard to facilitate the redevelopment, which is not the case the last time around. It was kind of like, I don't know how those parcels were selected the last time around, but a lot of them were just sitting, and sometimes people didn't even know they were KOZ. In fact, I worked for a developer at the time who had one of them, didn't even know it. So it's hard to use it as a development incentive if you don't even know that it is in place on your property. But that being said,
And I think if you look at the KOZ, the success of the KOZ program, the most successful one is having another major opening on Saturday night, Maxim's in the Pomeroy building. Those 22 apartments rented within 6 weeks at $950 to $1,050 a month. 22 apartments online in 6 weeks. That's what's happening, and I know we probably don't promote it enough and tell you enough of what we're doing, but there's a lot of good things going on in the West Ward with our city-operated rehab program, where we're taking blighted homes, fixing them up, and I mean, really doing a great job, I serve my own home. And, you know, with all brand-new, high-energy and high-efficiency appliances and furnaces, and then selling them to people who are single-family, and 90% of them are just young professional couples, no kids, or they're empty nesters. So we're not really putting a large burden on the school district with the type of development we're getting. None of the development downtown is kids. It's all singles or couples. And that KOZ, the Pomeroy building, would have never happened without the KOZ. The Siegel Museum would have never happened without the KOZ. Hotel Easton, if you haven't been down to the Grand Estonian, it is now at 87% occupancy as a hotel. They bought back all the condominiums and turned them into hotel rooms, and they're at 87% occupancy, bringing people into the city, spending money, which is increasing all of our tax revenue. So there's a lot of synergy that's happening, and if we work together, I think we could continue to make it happen to benefit both of us. But I think Tim's right. When these were put on, that first KOZ program, when the city came in and got you put on, they did nothing. They didn't even have an economic development director. All right, so I don't know what they thought they were gonna do, but they did nothing. And we've been very, very aggressive in our economic development programs. So like I said, 320 million, almost 350 million.
and the other distinction we've discussed before between the older program and the new is you used to get the benefit regardless of whether there was redevelopment. Now you actually have to substantially, is the terminology, I guess, in the act, but substantially rehabilitate the property to be eligible for the benefit. So if you don't do anything, you don't get anything.
So the owner of Black Diamond, if you choose to keep him on, and I really don't care either. I've worked with him for 4.5 years, I really don't care. If you choose to keep it in there because of its proximity and because of the fact that it is an eyesore, and it's dangerous, it's not safe. He continues to pay the taxes, even though it's in the KOZ, because he hasn't made any substantial. That's a big difference than the last time when he got 10 years of tax-free.
Within the next 2 to 3 years, the City and Redevelopment Authority will have much less involvement in the Simone Silk Mill at 13th Street as we phase in the new developer and be able to have kind of shifted attention and time to that project, which is why I said I foresee within the next 2 to 3 to 4 years. If we make a concerted effort to work with the owner of Black Diamond, or if we have to take ownership of it ourselves, that's definitely in the plans. And so I think we can be successful with it if given this tool. And we would certainly try even without the tool, but I think it would be very helpful. Because of, mainly I think in that particular case, the cost for the environmental remediation and the demolition of that site just to get it to developable land is huge. And I think it would make a nice residential, nothing you guys want to hear, but
Senior cottages.
there you go.
They like senior cottages.
Or like a little village-type mixed-use community. Anyway,
What's the age requirement you're thinking about?
55 and up.
I'm in.
All right, okay, sounds good. So thank you for your time, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Mike, moving on.
Well, are we, what's the,
Well, I don't-
moving it to the board for, feeling of the board to move on to the. board meeting,
Consideration.
this resolution? Or we did it at the end?
At the end.
All right.
Yeah, somebody else had questions on it. Oh, I am, haven't I? Yeah, I am, thank you. Were there any other questions on that issue? Any thoughts on, should it move or does it drop?
I would vote for its approval.
I would,
Okay. Okay. Mike, middle school busing?
Okay,
in high
I'm
school?
here tonight to respectfully request the board reinstate a portion of the late transportation runs that were eliminated as part of the budget process for 12-13. There was somewhat of a communication faux pas between EPFED being cut and late runs being cut, and EPFED being on the second level of cuts, and so on and so forth. But what it comes down to is, in conversation with the building principals, the EPFED that did stay in the budget, a lot of it is being underutilized or under-participated, if that's a word, by the students as a result of transportation issues at the end of those programs after school. So what I'm proposing is that we had 4 days a week on the late runs. What I'm proposing is that we reestablish 2 days a week, and which comes to a total of about $25,000 to $28,000 for the year. And I was able to, in working with the principals and with Mr. First, we were able to realize some money in a purchased services account between the high school and the middle school, an account that we use for contracted services, consultants, that, looking at the history and our projection for this year, that we will be able to realize that money there, as opposed to taking it from, somewhere else, or from retirement or anything else. So we were able to find that money to reinstate it within the budget. And I'm asking the board to do that.
I have a question about that. This is Amelia, maybe you can address this. The grant that is in place for after-school programming this year for the 5 through 8? Okay, that's paid for already, correct? So,
I don't,
you know what I'm getting at, right?
I tried to piggyback off of that,
Okay.
but that run is 10 of 6.
Oh, okay.
It's a much later run because
Yeah.
that
Okay.
program must operate for 3 hours a day. So I believe these runs
Yeah.
would be about a 4 o'clock.
Yeah, it's like 4
Yeah.
o'clock. It's about an hour after
Okay.
school. And also,
Thank you.
note also that Cheston, March, and Paxenosa do have late runs. They're paid for out of Title I money. So it's the high school, and again, the high school and middle school that I'm proposing here to reinstate. And I think that the principals would be very grateful, and the students, because I think that the participation has really fallen off without that transportation.
Have any of the other elementary schools requested a need for a late run, being that they don't have?
No, not at this time.
Any other questions? Last but not least, the foundation.
Yeah, just an update. Mr. Fanel and Mr. Ryder and Ms. Ellison talked to the E Foundation and started the process of revamping it or turning it into an Easton Foundation. And I'll let Bob explain a little more than that. So the conversations have started. We looked at the bylaws and have some draft revisions, and are waiting for a conversation with the E Foundation people to move forward.
I mean, this has been going on for almost a year already. And so back with, have to get them back over to Amy and Ed. They're looking at their bylaws. Certain paperwork has been filed with the state finally, and that's in place. And once we get their approval with the bylaws, we had also met and talked to we had met with some people in other foundations. We talked with consultants, or a consultant that had worked with other foundations, which we'll be bringing back to here. That would then help a foundation moving ahead, because obviously the thought is that a foundation is out there for the benefit of the district, the benefit of the students, the benefit of programs and everything. And it may mean would mean an investment on our part to maybe kick it off and everything with a consultant, moving them ahead, showing them direction and everything, and also making sure that they actually have a good base. And I'm not talking financial base, I'm talking people base. You know, looking at the officers and everything, that they have a good base so that they can develop and obviously build something for financial support and everything into programs, into specialty things, and therefore continue supporting special needs. Could be summer reading programs. There was just an article this morning in the paper and letters to the editor about a summer reading program that was funded by a foundation. And so those are the types of things that hopefully this group can do. Again, I think it's getting the right people and moving it forward. And also putting the precautions in. I think over the years, there was discussion a little bit amongst this board, but with previous boards and with previous organizations. There were foundations out there, and they're there and still in name, but nothing's occurring with them. And to make sure that this is something, again, that is ongoing, that can be functional. So there will be more information coming once the bylaws start to, you know, wrap up and they seem to have their thoughts of where they're going to be, is to get the bylaws out to everybody that we can read them, and at a future meeting, review everything, and also bring in the consultant to meet with everybody. I don't think there's much more. Or any questions on that, or? The thing is, we've been missing the boat here for almost, now it's going to be a second. We weren't all here, but in essence, we're missing the boat for another year because, you know, at different times of year, I hate to say it, during athletic events, as you come up to Thanksgiving Day and everything, those are wonderful opportunities for the networking and everything to make sure you get the right people. So we're most likely going to miss that again. That's all I have. Public to be heard, anybody? Yes, sir.
Easton's blessed with the best mayor's had for a long time. Perhaps won't have another one as good for a long time. But that doesn't mean a KOZ is necessarily good or bad. As an aside, I made a suggestion to a couple of people about getting some of these dilapidated buildings into the hands of the CIT for the students to rehab. And people told me it couldn't be done. If the mayor is as smart as he says he is, I would think that there's a way to make that happen as part of the quid pro quo for moving forward with things that are important to him. Because I think making these things available for the educational process is important to the neighborhoods where they could occur. And where there's a will, there's a way. But more importantly, a friend of mine's an attorney with a major law firm in a big city. And I asked him a question about how to stretch certain tax points. And he stopped me in the middle of the question. He says, Drew, I can't do that because some of my clients are doing work in the Lehigh Valley. But let me tell you this, I can stretch it twice as far as you think you can stretch it. The people that are doing this development work are smart. I looked up the pedigree of some of them, and it's an Ivy League roster. And they're using law firms that send them 6-digit bills for their work. They're making money. I'm not saying that's wrong, but they're in it for money. And they're making their money up front. You're getting anything on the backside of the equation, if and when they get there, if and when the train doesn't stop, if and when the train doesn't get derailed, if and when we're still alive when we get there. You don't have any control over where the train's going. You need to get back into the equation if you get on with more control. Now, not all development is good development. If I put up a bus terminal for more people to go to New York, I lose money because people who commute to New York do not pay Pennsylvania tax, do not pay Eastern tax, do not pay school tax. Simple as that. If I put up an office building, people may or may not pay taxes depending on what they're doing. If you live in Easton on College Hill and you work for a New York firm but never go to work and sit home all the time and telecommute, you do not pay Easton tax, you do not pay school tax, you do not pay Pennsylvania tax. If you're a lawyer and you commute to bus to Philadelphia, you don't pay either. So not all development is good because we haven't fixed some of the other pieces of it. Now, at the other end of the equation, if I put up housing, and it happens to be rental housing, and whoever the landlord is happens to have a different philosophy than you do. His bottom line occurs up front. He gets paid one way or another. If he sends you 2.6 children, it's going to be a long time before you get paid, but you've got the 2.6 children tomorrow morning, or whenever they happen to get there. And if they happen to be a highly transient nature of students, you're going to get whopping burdens. Now, part of the problem with Easton is it's 50-some% rental and landlord control. It needs to shift a little bit towards more homeowner so that you have a better chance of doing your mission well. And I'm not sure the KOZ says we're going to help the school district get to what it needs. And we can go down through, you know, if you put up a fancy office building, everybody goes down there, as they did in Philadelphia, and over here you now have a less desirable place because, after all, these guys have no taxes. You know, I can move a law firm down because the partners don't pay partnership income tax either. If I move a store over here, I've now created a void over here. So that not all development is good. I agree that jobs help, certainly do help. And it's a tough choice you make, but I think you should go through it line by line, project by project, building by building. And keep in mind, the mayor has previously promised what he won't do. But the courts have already ruled that you can't put those kind of restrictions in the deal because other school districts have done that. And the developers come along and said, well, I don't want to do this, I want to do that. So that I don't know how to stop that other than by saying you can't have the project unless you are comfortable with what moves forward. I think you should go forward, but line by line, case by case, with all of the safety factors that are important. Because as you know, some of the people in Wilson Borough started asking for tax appeals down before the project was done. So the pot of gold wasn't there. It was taken away. So seriously, it's easy to talk the good line. It's much harder to deliver it.
Thanks, Drew.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
And anyone else this evening? Not seeing anyone else. One last comment here. I missed this earlier. Janet, back to you. There was a question I had asked Sue to address slightly, and this was not on the agenda, so just a couple comments. And that had to do with the PSSA results.
For the, a PSSA update in regards to the school improvement plans will be given at the November committee meeting, which will be on November 13th. So I wanted to make sure that that was part of the agenda.
Last but not least, on non-agenda items, any comments from the public? Seeing no hands, this will adjourn the meeting. We will have an executive session that starts. Pardon?